you, please.
Thank you very much, Tony. Really pleased to be here today, everybody. I work a lot here in the UK with my organisation known as Findacure, and our focus really is about trying to connect a range of different rare disease patient groups and communities together so that they can learn from one another, gain experiences and knowledge, and hopefully grow, professionalise and increase the output that they're looking to achieve with their organisation, hopefully making a huge difference to the patients themselves. So today in this session, we're going to share a video initially from a webinar that Findacure ran back in the summer, and you will see my face appearing at the end bearded. So it's a little bit of a transformation in myself at that time. But this webinar was all about the importance of patient data. The way that this makes such a huge impact and can really transform the landscape for rare disease patients. The webinar is presented by Dan Lewi. He'll be joining us live after the video is shared, highlighting the work that his patient organisation, CATS, Cure and Action for Tay-Sachs, had done since formation in 2011 to collect huge amounts of information about the condition from a patient perspective, and to use that and to drive it forward to make research really transform the research landscape in cats, and to a position now where a number of treatments are in development. So I hope you'll find that really interesting, and it does just highlight that importance of collecting data effectively and really the role that we can all play in moving the landscape forward for our rare condition. So with that, I will allow Victor to start the video, and I hope that you all find it interesting and informative.
So I'm going to talk you through how the CATS Foundation went about its kind of data collection, and where we saw the importance of kind of taking this approach to drive forward the research and the treatment options for our disease, which is Tay-Sachs and Sanoff. So just to give you a very kind of quick overview, I think it's important to understand kind of who we are as an organisation. So we were founded in 2011 to provide support for people affected by Tay-Sachs and Sanoff disease. Those are two rare genetic disorders that had no dedicated support organisation here in the UK or Europe. There are a few organisations in the US, but there's nothing really providing us any support here. And they're unfortunately terminal diseases in the infantile form, and there was a real need to have someone stand up and kind of put the disease on the map in terms of for research and for future treatments. In terms of data collection, again, it's quite important to understand what we're about. So we're a small community with an incidence rate of about 1 in 320,000 people diagnosed each year in the UK. That's between 3 to 6 people a year. It's a terminal illness where people lose ability to function independently and end up requiring 24-hour care. An average life expectancy around about 5 years of age. So it's a very cruel disease when it affects children and adults as well. So like many of you on the calls who are patient groups, we all have a beginning of our story, and the beginning of our story is normally about one person. In our case, it's this young lady here. This is my eldest daughter, Amelie, and she was diagnosed with Tay-Sachs at 15 months of age in 2011. As I said before, she's the reason why the organisation was started, because there was no support, there was no information, there was no understanding of the research, and there was no idea what we could do for the future for her. We were just going to watch her slip away through this disease. And if we were going to do that, were we just going to sit there and watch that, or we're going to try and do something and change the future for other children affected by the disease? And so that's what happened. We decided to set up a patient group here in the UK to look at the research and to raise our profile, because we quickly realised that although it's rare, there must be other people. And like many of you are impacted by a rare disease, we were told the usual: go home, spend time with your child, she's going to pass away, and you're not going to meet another family affected by this disease. And I didn't believe in that. My wife didn't believe in that. We really thought we needed to work out a way to bring people together to work with researchers and pharma companies to drive forward research. And to do that, we quickly set ourselves a goal at the charity. And the idea being that we wanted to save children from this disease. We wanted them to have the opportunity to have a future, because it was really bleak. To be honest, walking out of a diagnosis where you're told your child's going to die is the worst thing that any parent has to face. And so we wanted to change that for other people in the future. So for us, it was really important that we set foundations as an organisation. We realised that raising awareness is really important. To raise awareness, you get more patient numbers, and we get more patient numbers, you can get more data. We also quickly realised that setting up charities, not just here in the UK, in Europe, was vital. And our kind of approach here was that we wanted to get as many people within some sort of patient registry as quickly as possible, but we couldn't be responsible for that as one overarching organisation that supported everyone in Europe. So what we we took the stance that we should empower other parents who could set up charities in their home country, because they would understand the rules and regulations and have language barriers, and they could do a similar thing that we've done here in the UK, which was, for us, has worked out very well. And we're able to develop an actual consortium, and this is where we bring together all the European charities together to look for treatments and look for research, because it's much better as a group to stick together than to be funding projects independently. And actually, we've been able to drive forward a lot of research projects this way. And I think this approach, by empowering other parents from other countries to lead their charity rather than having that one organisation, has been really critical to our success. So I want to take you all the way back to 2011. So this is when Emily was diagnosed, and we did the usual, you search for any miracle cure out there, and this is the only thing we found. There was one gene therapy program being looked at here in the UK, and there was nothing else. There was no drug repurposing, there was no drug studies, there was nothing. So we realised that, you know, there needed to be a change. I remember talking to researchers and talking to pharma companies saying that we need to do something about Tay-Sachs disease. What can we do? How can we get you guys interested to look at this disease to help us find a way where we could provide a treatment? And they said to me, the numbers speak for themselves. So I remember being told that many times, there aren't enough numbers. And as the parent, or sometimes the patient, when you're that 1 in a million, or in our case, that 1 in 320,000, that really hurts, because it doesn't matter if there's 1 in 10 million. If you're the person who's affected by a disease, or you're watching your child die, that's the only number you need to know. You shouldn't have to justify why you need to look at a treatment. But unfortunately, to get the farmer involved, to get researchers involved, we had to show the numbers. So the numbers had to speak for themselves. So we had to drive things forward by finding patients and getting all of their data together that we could then present and say, look, there isn't just one person in the UK or 2 people. There's, you know, there's 200, 300 people across Europe who could benefit from any treatment that you're looking at. So to take you back again to 2011, this is where we were. There was one treatment option potentially, but it was quite a way off. And my wife and I sat down and said, look, we need to set a goal for the organisation. Wouldn't it be amazing in 20 years' time that we would have multiple treatments for Tay-Sachs disease? No, we could have this main goal that we want to say in 20 years' time, we could potentially be curing children from dying from Tay-Sachs. And at Aparito, we actually use something called objective key results. To me, this is really important. An OKR is essentially setting yourself a very clearly defined goal that you can achieve. And so for us, this was our key goal. We wanted to get these treatments in 20 years' time. And yes, it's ambitious, but I think we can get there. And I always think back to my eldest brother. So my eldest brother was diagnosed with diabetes when he was 5 years old. My mother was told, take your son home. He's never going to leave home. He's probably going to lose his legs because of complications of diabetes. He's never going to get married. He's never going to have children. So prepare yourself. It's going to be a rough ride for the next few years as your son, you know, suffers from diabetes. The thing is, 20 years later, my brother is a successful teacher. He's married. He has 4 children. And thankfully, he doesn't live at home anymore. But it showed that in 20 years, he went from having my mum have to draw up his insulin into the traditional syringes, you know, go to the bathroom to give him his injections in his leg or in his bum or his stomach. Now we can do it discreetly, even at the dinner table. No one will know he's actually using his insulin. So if that can happen in 20 years, imagine what we can do if we get enough people interested in our disease. There's technology has moved on so far, especially on the research side with gene therapy and with drug repurposing, that I really firmly believe that this is a goal that we can achieve. So the first thing we did to kind of achieve that goal was we identified that there were key stakeholders here, but they're all kind of working independently. The charities were doing their own thing, the patients were doing their own thing. Research was happening, wasn't really involving patients that often, and pharma were kind of circulating, but not really being interested in the disease. We realized very quickly we had to bring them together. And to bring them together, what was the one thing that they'll all be interested in? And in this case, it's data. Data on the disease, understanding the impact it has on an individual, and how actually can move things forward and get treatments out there. And for us, it's the really key point, as teamwork makes the dream work. You have to collaborate. So we had to work with our patients. We had to work with our other patient groups. We had to work with pharma and researchers to get them all on the same page, that if we all club together and collaborate, we can drive forward research much quicker than it's happened before. and we can get these treatments happening and it's going to save children's lives. To us, it's really, really important. It's a collaborative approach. And this is, to me, one of the most important things. I speak to many patient groups over the years, and through Aparita, more and more patient groups I've spoken to have talked about having patient registries, developing endpoints and things like that. But to me, the patient group needs to really understand, what do they want to achieve? Yeah. What do they want to collect? Why do they want to collect it? And how do they want to collect it? These are really, really important decisions, because if you don't really understand why, you just think you should have a registry, it will fail, because you need to get buy-in from everyone involved. You need to get buy-in from your doctors, from your researchers, and from your patients and parents and carers to give you that data. So for us, we decided very clearly we wanted to have a natural history of the disease. There was lots of speculation that the disease followed this linear path where seizures happen at a certain point, they required assisted feeding, but no one fully understood what the tradition, what a kind of standard line of the disease was. We wanted to understand that in a lot more detail. We wanted to connect families, and I think this is often overlooked when you're collecting data for patient registries. People tend to only look at the farmer and the researcher side. Actually, it's vital to bring families together, because then that gives them the opportunity to come together, spend time together, and meet other people affected by the rare disease. And the byproduct of that is that pharma, that researchers are interested, because they can see that there are patient numbers, because no company will look at the disease to drive it forward for a treatment without actually having any patient numbers. And these are one of the main things that the any sort of registry or data collection can do. And then the other really important thing is looking at who your data can help. So of course, researchers, doctors, pharma are really, really important in this conversation. But to me, sometimes I find that these guys are overlooked, and these are the patients. These are the people who are giving their data, or their parents are giving the data. And these are the ones you want to impact. And I think it's just the most important thing that we always remember, that we're doing this for these people. And in our case, for the Cats Foundation, these 4 children have sadly passed away from the disease. So the data that they've provided will, and we hope, impact and influence research going forward, and impact other families who are affected by Tay-Sachs and hand-offs. Nothing's given in vain, that we know that we can and we will make a difference to those other people affected by the diseases in the future. And one of the other big decisions when you start any sort of patient registry is, how much data do you want to keep? Do you want to keep a lot, or do you want to keep a little? And now for us, as a rare disease, we made the decision that we wanted to keep a lot of information, because we had small patient numbers. We knew that we could stay on top of contacting people when they needed to update their data. So we keep all sorts of things in relating to the disease and demographics and the personal data, versus just a little bit of information when you just keep a gene type and someone's gender. Because for us, the impact that we could have with a lot more information that we store within our patient registry means that we can unlock more information about the disease. Because sadly, for us, not very much was known about Tay-Sachs or hand-off, and thankfully that's now moved forward where a lot more is known. So the information that we collect for the Cats Foundation is here. So we collect everything about the diagnosis. So for this is diagnosis date, where that person was diagnosed, the gene mutations they have, and this is throwing up really interesting information about mutations from seen in different parts of the world actually appearing in Europe rather than South America, for example, and migration, seeing pockets and communities of people who have split apart, and our children are being diagnosed with Tay-Sachs in communities where it's rarely been seen. Then we keep the family history, which is really important, understanding who are carriers of the disease. We keep the symptoms, and we keep a lot of information here, because to us it's really important, as I said before, to understand the impact of disease on an individual. You know, when these symptoms happen. So we record when seizures start and that date, because it's really important to really understand at the age. So when people have seizures, when they have assisted feeding. And then we also keep the demographics where people are located throughout Europe. So we've got some great data there. And also we keep consent, because that's vital for any sort of data collection. That's all stored within our system. And this is a quote, and this is that kind of Jim quote, but to me it's really, really like vital for any sort of data collection. Someone needs to do the hard work. There is no, unfortunately, there's no miracle person out there who will just get the data to appear. Someone needs to go out, needs to collect it, needs to make it possible for patients to provide their information into the registry or any data collection project, and they have to do, someone has to do that heavy lifting. And for us, it took us a lot of work. So it took us 5 years to get anywhere near the point where we had enough information on our patient population to make a difference, to go to companies, to get papers written about that, the natural history. So you have to be prepared that it's not just a project that you set up and the data suddenly appears. You have to go out and proactively go and collect it. But it's one of the most rewarding things that can happen when you suddenly have researchers contacting you for information about the disease, and you can give it. You can provide, the disease progression. You can say the genetic mutations I've never seen before. And it's fascinating to see them get interested in the disease and potentially look at treatment options with pharma companies. So for me, I'm a big advocate of patient-reported data. It's the same as Aperito. We think it's a great way to actually get true information because it's accurate. Having been a parent of a child affected by a rare disease, if someone said to me, when did your child have their first seizure? I can tell you it was in November 2011. I was having coffee with my dad in a coffee shop in London. Now I remember it distinctly happening. And this is the thing, parents, carers and patients themselves are invested in their health. They want to make a difference, and they have this accurate information they can give to you to input into some sort of data project that can influence the research on the disease. And I think that going down this route with patient-reported data is so important nowadays, because you're not restricting it into National Health Services or having it locked away. You're having it available within your system, which can make a difference. And I think this is the quote that everyone knows, is straight from the horse's mouth, and it really is. You're getting that information directly from the people impacted by the condition, and it can really make a difference. And in terms of data collection, to me, this is the sad thing. It really is a numbers game. Back in 2011, there were a few kind of natural history studies that are kind of literature reviews, but no one had a cohort of patients. There were maybe 3 people here in the UK. We now have over 120 plus patients in our patient registry who were diagnosed after 2015 or were alive at 2015 when the diagnosis of Tay-Sachs or Sanhoff. And this is a huge number of patients. I remember speaking to a company and they said, if you had 20 data on 25 patients, that's already a lot. So to be at 120 in 5 years, it's taken us a long time, but now we can go to companies, we can go to researchers and get them interested in our disease. And one of the things that Ellen and Famida will talk about, this partnership that Pulse and Aperito have, is that they're going to be able to help other patient groups cut down that journey. So what's taken us 5 years potentially can help other patient groups have this journey that maybe takes 1 year. That can help drive forward research so much quicker. And there won't be as much hard work on the patient group, because all of this was off our own back. We had to contact the company who could develop our patient registry. We had to go out proactively and get patients and get translations done and get the data into our system. But having a digital partner can really make a difference in speeding that journey up, which I think is going to be really, really exciting. And so for us, the registry, we found new things. And as I said before, we have this lineal kind of progression of the disease. It's really exciting. It's been talked about in literature for years, but no one's actually been able to produce a chart. And now we have that. And this is something we can then look at in any treatment. We can move the endpoints. So we're looking at maintaining feeding, for example, or the seizure activity. We can look at the geographic location of people, and it's really exciting what you can discover in a patient registry or data collection project. And I'm going to just want to take you back to 2011. So when I said that this was the state of play for research, and it was, and remember I said we have this goal to have treatments available in 20 years or so. This is what we've achieved in the last 9-10 years. So by 2020, we've got multiple projects going on. We've got actually 3 different gene therapy programs that are being looked at with different approaches. We've got a couple of drug repurposing studies. We've got new drugs coming to the market, substrate reduction therapy, which is really, really exciting. This isn't down by luck. This is down by hard work of the patients community, hard work of the patient groups, not just us, but other patient groups in Europe and the US, to put our disease on the map. And the only way we've been able to do that is with the patient data and patient numbers. And I look at this and I just think back in 2011, when Emily was diagnosed, walking out with no diagnosis packs or anything, it was a photocopy of a printout of what Tay-Sachs was. Seeing where we are now, not just that people walk out of the hospital with a diagnosis, they get a diagnosis pack and immediate contact to a charity that supports them, but seeing the development in research is the most exciting thing, because if we've done this in 9 or 10 years, I really believe that our goal of 20 years time is attainable, and we can potentially have those treatments in place to save children affected by the disease. I just want to quickly touch on the impact of what your data can have. So this little boy, the little baby boy there, is Brandon, and he's his brother Thomas. So Thomas sadly passed away from Tay-Sachs 20 years ago. His family never met anyone else affected by Tay-Sachs or Sandhoff disease. And Brandon, bless him, was a small baby when his brother died. And in fact, last year, Brandon contacted us and wanted to know more about the disease. He wanted to know more about how it impacted his brother, how it impacts other children. This is now Brandon as an adult. He's holding a little boy called Stanley, who sadly passed away as well. But Stanley went to the same hospice as Thomas, and that's how we're able to connect them. And we're able to connect them via the simple fact that we had a community, and our community is based on the data we collect. The data we collect all feeds into this registry project that we have, this data collection project that is impacting and make a difference to our community. And I just look at this photo, and to me, it just sums up what our goal is. We're going to make a difference. And Brandon says his parents can't believe how much support families now get. They literally had nothing. And that's a testament to our community, that people can now come together and share stories, share experiences, and help them through the journey that they're going to be going through. And just to touch back on, this is our dream, to have this kind of multiple treatments in 10 years time. I really believe, as you've seen in the presentation, we've moved things forward very quickly. We could have been quicker. We could, if we had a technology partner, for example, on the registry side, who could have helped us. Yes, we could have been in this journey a few years ahead. But the exciting thing is, I really believe we're going to get there, and we are giving people hope. We're giving them the light at the end of the tunnel. At the end of the day, that's all you really need as a family or a person affected by a rare disease. You need to know that it's not just, that's it, game over. No, there are treatment options coming to market. We potentially can help you in the future. And I think that's the really exciting thing that you can do with data collection and with patient registries. You can really help them see that nothing is standing still and everyone is working towards this common goal of finding a treatment. So there's my contact details if anyone wants to get in touch or has any questions about the project of what we did.
And that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Really brilliant illustration, I think, of what a simple idea and a real focus on collecting data can achieve in the patient group. I just wanted to drop in with a couple of questions. We've got a couple of minutes. Lots of patients we talk to are trying to do this kind of thing and get registry set up and started, but there's always that initial hurdle of how do you go around sourcing that bit of funding or that making that first step. I wonder if you could just share some of your thoughts or experience in how you went about that at CATS.
So with the funding, we were fortunate to get a couple of small grants from actual families who had children affected by the disease, and so we also funded most of it directly through the charity, because we saw the importance of the importance of having some sort of registry that could impact the disease, and then finding a partner, in our case OpenApp, were able to provide the technology at a cost we could afford. We could never have built something like this, any sort of registry, but being able to partner with someone who wanted to make a difference in a rare disease space was important for us.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I know when we chatted earlier, you mentioned that you'd moved to a place where you're looking to commercialize in some way. I just wondered if you could maybe comment a little bit on that and the strategy behind it and the kind of challenges you might have encountered down the way.
The challenge is more the looking at the bigger picture. We're all in a really difficult space in terms of funding as patient groups, and the economic climate is even now with COVID's got even worse. We're all fighting for money essentially to keep ourselves going. And you look at the assets we have as patient groups. Our data is our asset. You look at the pharma companies; they want to take a drug to market, and they will charge X amount. If they need data, we can provide them data at a cost, because then the money we get goes directly back into our patient community to help them. There's a moral question of, should you be charged for the data? Well, if a company's going to be making money on the back of putting a treatment to market, then the patient group should also benefit from that. And as I said, we have this data that's not behind any firewalls. It's not kept restricted by the NHS or by other pharma companies. It's kept by the patient organisation, and we are governed by a governing document that says we have to benefit our community. So it's not like anyone's going to be making any money off the back of it. It's all about making sure that anything we get can be reinvested back into our core services, which is providing support to our children and our adults affected by Tay-Sachs and Sanofi disease.
Fantastic, Dan. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Okay, guys. So hopefully you can see that that video, that film, that example really does illustrate the journey that you can go on. And how far you can advance things into your rare disease area by beginning to look at the data that you hold. And as Dan said, that is the huge asset that patient communities hold, and codifying that, storing that in a way that allows you to begin to really understand what is going on with your condition, get a better understanding of natural history, identify more patients, identify better community connections, and begin to create a landscape where those big pharma companies, those biotech companies start to look at your condition and rather than seeing a rare disease with few patients that's hard to work on, they see an opportunity to begin to deliver some change into this area. And I think it's really powerful, and it's the type of pattern we are seeing across the rare disease space now, where patient groups and patient communities are beginning to capture more of their information and find ways to drive it forward to make a difference in their area. What I'm going to do now is bring in Dan, who's going to here with us to talk live and answer a few questions if you have any for him about that situation, and also Con Hennessy. So Con is involved in OpenApp, which is the company that Dan mentioned that helped them support and produce that that registry. So welcome both Dan and Con.
Hey Rick, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you both for joining us. So Con is part of one of these companies that are out there trying to help organizations develop, grow, and set up these registries to move things forward. And Dan as well works for a company called Apparito, which is involved in capturing and finding ways to capture patient-reported outcomes and data, which can feed into these type of settings. All of this is about finding ways to harness the information you have. So Con, I'd just like to bring you in at the start, if that's all right. And I'd be really keen just to get your thoughts on what are the key success factors, if you like, for a patient registry based on the experience that you've had, building a number of these over the last few years at OpenApp?
I suppose that there's many of the points there that Dan touched on. It's the sense of purpose. Why are you doing it? That has to be the very first question, because there's a lot of organizations out there at the moment, and they're little more than Facebook groups. They're trying to find and support each other, and as a first step, that's absolutely essential. You want to converse with others who are having the same problems, who are experiencing the health system in a similar way, or foreign health systems that may also be doing things slightly differently and maybe having different results. You want to start those conversations. The next level a lot of those organizations want to go to, is, I suppose, is where Dan also talked about there, is advocacy within your local health system. And for that, you do need some numbers, even if it's only to talk to the right researcher, the right expert center, if there is one in your region, in your country. And for that, you need a little bit of information. It's not a huge amount. It's your demographics, your diagnosis, the stage at which you are at, or that your son or daughter is at, And from there, then it's, well, okay, now if we want to support research, if we want to do that, it's and when you start a registry, you can have, as Dan was already talking about, and a lot of successful registries, it's not a multi-year project. It's a project there's a decade in it. There's 2 decades in it. there's so many different things. So cystic fibrosis, for example, we work with the European Cystic Fibrosis Society. Cystic fibrosis is where we started helping the rare disease community. Many people would, cystic fibrosis is just about inside the rare disease umbrella. It's the poster child for it. They get funding, from their community, from lots of different places, and yet still the treatments that are there's some fantastic treatments that have only come out in the last few years. And all of this is still based on the registry data that they're generating, substantial quality data. It's really only in the last 10 years that they have been able to generate good quality data, and internationally, and to be able to support researchers. And they're trying to go levels below that again, and reach out to other countries and bring those in as well, because now they're discovering subtypes, and it's, so look at, it's not a short road, it's a long road. If I can take a slight tangent into the European level, there's the European reference networks as well, which are very important for rare disease communities. So that's at the European level. They're trying to establish these centers of excellence throughout Europe to support various different groups of rare diseases, body systems effectively. And they're trying to build up on that. I'm not even, but I've no idea where that sits with Brexit, so I'm not going to go there. But as a concept, and as something that it's still, the UK should still be able to feed into that and benefit from that as well. There's no reason why it cannot. But it's the starting of more of an international level as well, because there's a lot of interconnections between whatever, like as Dan said, with his own organizations. You need to have the local communities set up as well, and you build off of that. Australia is quite well, has the right mentality for a lot of this stuff as well, like the UK. There, you guys in general, you're leaders in a lot of these international organizations, and a lot of that is from openness, and it's from knowing that you have to bring your data together with others, because rare disease communities everywhere are tiny. But when you bring them together, they're large communities then that the researchers, they have enough data to actually start making a difference. So I'll stop there.
No, that's fantastic. I think really highlighting the importance of collaboration, but also really understanding, as Dan said, what it is you want to achieve when you get started with this and where the targets are. I have a few questions creeping in. So Dan, I've just referred to you, and then maybe Con, if you want to comment. A question here asking about how you actually went about collecting the data practically in the register you were setting up, and what were the key sources and inputs for that. So if you want to comment a little bit on how that data collection happened and who was the input.
So the key sources for us are the parents, the carers, and the patients themselves. We're a big believer in patient-reported data, purely because you get a higher quality, accurate information. And again, you're asking the people who know, and so they're going to give you exactly the information required, and also they're invested in it because they know you're working towards treatments. As Con was saying, working together is so important, not just as a charity here in the UK, but across Europe, because the more numbers we get, the more as a convincing argument we have to go to researchers to then look at for us, which takes actually, right, okay, this is a very rare disease, get 2 to 6 kids diagnosed in the UK every year, but actually we have all of these numbers of patients where we can make an impact. Then you've got the European guys doing the same. All of a sudden, you're not going to look at academic researcher with 2 patients, 10 patients. You're going with hundreds of patients, and all of a sudden, they can see that pharma will get involved. Once pharma's involved, you suddenly can expedite that process of having your research done, which is really, really important because you can get the treatment at the end. And so I remember we had a scientific meeting back in 2015, which is when we launched the registry. And there was one of the speakers saying it takes between 10 to 15 years to get a treatment started, from having that initial idea to get the research done, to go to market and the post-marketing. So one of our projects we're involved in, we managed to get a trial started in 3 years. And a lot of that was because we had the data already. We could give them information and say, look, guys, this is the natural history of the disease. This is the next steps. And this is why That is so important. And going to the patients and going to the parents and carers to get that information, because they will give it. If you wait for healthcare services, you wait for doctors, these guys are overworked. In our case, in rare disease, there's a lysosomal storage disorder. They're seeing upwards of 20 to 50 different diseases, which they're meant to be the expert on. And then they're meant to have all of that information for those patients to then say, right, I need you to put this patient's data into this registry for this disease, but then for this patient and this registry for this disease, and it goes on and on and on. And then, you know, and by no fault of their own, they get so overwhelmed, they don't know where to start. And then the data's never given. So by going to the patients is, like, to me, the absolute key. And that's why OpenApp, it massively helped us have a system where we could collect it. We could get all the consent done. We could get everything uploaded into the system and stored safely and securely, providing the service that we couldn't do, which is actual data storage and data collection.
So I think just the point to draw on there, which is fantastic, is that you're able to activate the community to do that and to really tie into that mission of collecting the data. Are there any techniques or approaches that you tried to hone in on to make sure the community understand the benefit of collecting that data, or to see how things are progressing? Is it simply about, you know, having these kind of conferences and feeding back?
Yeah, it's transparency. And we're a really transparent organisation, not just within the UK, but Europe and our American partners as well, is that these are the projects we're involved in. This is why we're collecting the data. There's no ulterior motive to what we're trying to do. No one's benefiting from it. The community is. That's the whole point. And so being open and honest to why you want to collect the data and the reasons why. I mean, if people don't want to provide information, that's fine. No one's going to have an issue with it. But the more people who are willing to do that can really drive forward that research. And the end goal for us is simply to have a treatment to stop children dying. I mean, it's that simple. And that's our overall goal.
Thank you, Dan. Con, any just last comments on that in particular about building that engagement?
I suppose two things for me. One, and Dan did touch on it, but it's so important that the patient or the clinical organization owns the data. And by owning, I mean it's not a commercial organization that owns the data. It's the community that owns the data. There's so many horror stories of whether it's going into institutions and the governance not right on the data, and the institution effectively owning the data. The researcher disappears, and that's it. Your data, you've no access to the data. You know, years of research, years of investment of bringing community with you simply disappears. Second thing is, while patient-reported data has huge value, at some point or other, you also want to be gathering clinical data. Now, that may or may not be the clinicians inputting the data, but from cystic fibrosis and many others, they actually pay for or sponsor clinical research nurses or clinical research assistants to go in, look at the data in the hospital. You have to have the right governance to allow them to do that, and it's not always easy. But then they input clinical data into the system. Unfortunately, and we're starting to see a shift in industry, but clinical data is always seen as more valuable than patient data. You know, unfortunately, that's where we are with it. You know, there is no data available. Patient data is still very valuable. Don't get me wrong, but it's the maturity of, as the organization and the community matures in their data collection. You absolutely should be expecting that there is clinical, good, solid, deep clinical data being collected to support that patient data. And they go in lockstep, because it's the outcome measures that the patients actually are reporting. Clinicians also have these outcome measures to see, are you improving or not? Has this treatment actually improved your quality of life? Not just has it improved a specific medical point, but it's the quality of life. And that is what supports the pharma when they go to the European Medicines Agency or whoever, the FDA, to say, here's a new treatment, and we can show you not just the medical endpoints improving, but we can show you the quality of life of the patients improving. And sometimes that actually overrules the medical endpoints, because there's some trials that are run hasn't run as expected. They didn't measure the right endpoints, but the patients' lives actually improved. And there's a handful of cases where drugs have been approved based on patient input.
And it should be on that front with the endpoints. It's so important now. The regulators are looking at developing treatments that have a positive impact on someone. It's not good enough just to say the drug biochemically works. You need to see that impact on the patient. And we were involved in a trial where we were able to change it from having a double-blind placebo to putting everyone on the pill, or sorry, on the drug. And we went to the FDA and presented the case, and they said, and I was there as the patient representative, and they said, why should we do this? And I just said, do you morally think it's acceptable to give a dying child a short pill? And there's just silence. And that is the truth. You have to be willing to change and see the impact on a patient. So if this drug works, and thankfully it does, you're going to see the impact. You can't be giving someone a placebo. It's just not morally correct. And this is what the regulators are becoming more attuned to doing. And with the development of patient-reported outcomes, the development of endpoints that are more specific to the disease, not trying to shoehorn in from one validated endpoint with one disease into another, trying to get these specific ones, I think is the way forward. And I do think we're seeing the shift with patient data is now becoming more and more important. And my goal, or my hope, is we'll get to a point where these sorts of registries, which OpenApp have helped lots of rare disease charities do, are going to become the perfect kind of explanation of the disease. This is the data you collect. This is what you need to go to regulator with, and there you are. You don't need to worry about other things.
Thank you both, guys. That's fantastic, and hopefully that's given you all a sense of what can be achieved and the benefits to the patient, the benefits to the clinician, the benefits to the community as a whole of having access to this type of data set. And I think it really does impact the whole pathway of what you're trying to achieve as a rare disease patient group, from community building and support through that early stage of drug development into the clinic, and then ultimately, as we've just touched on, to that point where drugs finally get approved and reimbursed. So it's been a pleasure to join you today. I'm sorry we've pushed it for a few minutes, but I really wanted to make sure you heard from these guys, and thank you. Hand back to Tony.
Thank you, Rick, and Daniel in particular. What a fantastic job you've done, and of course Con. And I suppose I'd have one observation at the end. All Behçet's treatment is off-label, i.e. drugs produced for other purposes. And I suppose, in a word, presumably a register will help facilitate farmer engagement and our centres of excellence with the patient community.